Hello and welcome to the Tees Valley Sport Podcast. I'm your host Danny Reid, and on today's episode of Meet the Team, we have Tracy. Tracy is the Active Education Officer here at Tees Valley Sport. Tracy, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
It's great having you here. So Tracy, you're the Active Education Officer. Can you tell us a little bit more about what this role is and a little bit more about yourself?
So I was a primary school teacher for 12 years prior to this role. So I've been really lucky in terms of working all over the country. I've worked in Germany, so I've worked in several different schools and seen lots of different ways of working.
Wow, Germany?
My husband was military, so...
Right, so garrison style. So you weren't actually teaching German children?
No, it was English Army children, so we followed the English curriculum out there, so it was all exactly the same as it would be over in the UK, apart from normal seasons. We had normal weather. I was out there, got to see lots of different countries, lots of different places, so a wealth of experience that way as well.
So when you were teaching over in Germany, did you become a teacher in Germany, or were you already a teacher before?
No, so I qualified here in England, and then I taught here for a year, and then I moved out to Germany, lived out there for 5 years, and then moved back, and then we're lucky enough to live down south, down in Surrey. So I taught down in Surrey and in Hampshire, and then I moved back up to a place called Catterick, which isn't too far away, and then taught over there, and then finished back in Middlesbrough teaching.
Wow. So you've got quite a lot of experience, almost international experience as a teacher. So it's quite apt that you're the Active Education Officer, because you've spent quite a lot of time understanding and seeing the impact of activity on kids, not just in the UK, but in different environments as well. Now, I'm a little bit curious about this. So did you notice much difference in Germany, in the garrison style teaching compared to normal mainstream schools?
No, so I think where we were, like I said, it was very much comparable to teaching in the UK, but I know living in Germany, they actually don't start school in formal way until later on to the way we do in England, so that's quite
really?
interesting thing. So in Germany, they actually do kindergarten, so again, it's all play up until 7, so again,
Really?
sort of informal education, so they very much focus on child development, on making sure children are ready, a bit like the Scandinavian countries as well, which again, really interesting. They're some of the most happiest children in the world, and they start their formal education later. They don't really focus on sitting the same way we do here. It's very much on children playing, developing, ensuring children are ready to learn. So again, they have, in Finland, they have so much time. So I think it's about 15 minutes outside for every hour of learning. So again, really interesting kind of things that I've learned about over in this role, but just how different things are in different countries.
Yeah, that's really insightful. I didn't realise they were so focused on the play element. That's really interesting. And 15 minutes per hour of outside time. That's really interesting. So Tracy, you're now the Active Education Officer at Tees Valley Sport. Can you tell us a little bit more about your journey to Tees Valley Sport and how you took the role up?
Yeah, so I left teaching back in after I had my second child, so my little girl. I felt just I wanted a bit of a change of direction. I was PE lead within one of the schools I worked in. I think that's where I suppose I've always had a passion in terms of I've led sports teams within each school I've been in. But I think being a PE lead was where I suppose for me it was just finding out it was more about PE, and especially the class I taught. It was very much I saw the impact firsthand on if I had my class up and moving, on if I had them sat for too long. Again, you'd notice that children started getting itchy, they wanted to move. So I think that's where I started to see firsthand the impact I was having as a teacher. And I think with this role, I was very much still connected to schools. When I first started the role, it was around the primary school sport premium. But as an organisation, we were still what we called the old county school sports partnership, where we're still delivering county level events. So I was still, again, working with children at the time. But actually, as I started the role, COVID hit. So again, I had a different experience to what I thought I was initially coming in with. So in terms of, I thought I was coming in and going to be getting straight on and hands-on. whereas then it turned to lockdown. So that brought fresh challenges in terms of, I suppose, the role that I initially thought I was coming into, but also the role as for us as an organisation.
Now, when COVID hit, how did you find the schools shift with their approach to physical activity? Did you notice much change in that?
I think schools were wanting support and wanting anything that we could offer in terms of getting children more physically active. And I think at the time there was quite a lot came out quite quickly. And I think for us personally as an organisation, we were aware that we had a county sports final coming up, where it's one of the big events that we had children from all over Tees Valley coming together. We couldn't do that in the normal way, so we had to work differently, and we created virtual school games where we created challenges that schools could do in school or children could do at home, and they competed against each other still in the same way they would face to face, but we recorded it virtually. So we had to kind of shift our way of thinking, and again it was just supporting schools with resources, anything we could just to get children active. But I think naturally, because of the way COVID hit, schools wanted children outside more. Children were outside a lot more than they were inside due to the ventilation things. And I think at the time, I think it helped probably to get more physical activity in there. I think things were more relaxed in terms of curriculum pressures. And I think it was more about the health and well-being. And I think for us, outside of school, it was all about that kind of hour, that time to get out with the fresh air. And I think it was the same with schools. It was get those children out and think about their kind of health and well-being at the heart of it, rather than, like I say, the school curriculum pressures. So I think it's kind of a fresh, welcome change.
Yeah, so like a lot more kind of focus on getting kids active in different ways rather than the traditional ways, really.
Yeah, and we held a number of virtual competitions over that year. And actually, I think schools, the feedback was schools actually preferred that, because again, they weren't having to think about costs of getting children out of school to competitions. The really the staff, they were able to access it in their own time. So yeah, they were really well received.
Brilliant. So it really did kind of allow a lot more of a different type of innovative thinking when it came to being physically active for kids who kind of thrown into the deep end and had to kind of think on the feet, which I kind of then think kind of links very nicely to the Tees Valley Sports new approach of like test and learn, really, doesn't it? Again, having that ability to test and learn to see what works and then move on from that. So yeah, that sounds really, really interesting. So do you want to tell me, is there anything else that you're currently working on or part of that's kind of driving things forwards?
Yes, my role changed. I started off as my role was predominantly, like I say, focusing on, I suppose, the school games element, but also the primary premium. So all schools get a set amount of money that's ring fenced to put towards school sport, physical activity. So I was responsible for kind of monitoring that across Tees Valley, but then that wasn't our responsibility as an organisation anymore. So my role then changed to the current title of Active Education Officer. So in my current role, I'm mainly at the minute working on two key areas. So we've got early years and also the Creating Active Schools project, which is known as CAS.
All right. What does the Creating Active Schools involve?
So it started in Yorkshire about, it was back in 2019. It was created because there was a need. It was seen as a need for the problem in terms of obesity crisis, mental health crisis is only getting worse year on year. Yet we keep putting interventions in place, but nothing's really changing. So things like the key one is things like the Daily Mile that was seen. I mean, it was all over the telly at one point in terms of this big initiative that was going to get children more active, get them outdoors. But yet things like that haven't necessarily changed. I mean, if you look at obesity data across Tees Valley, it's getting worse year on year, the mental health crisis. So it's not changing things. So I think as an organisation with Yorkshire Sport and Leeds Bradford University, it was right, what can we do to change? So they looked at something called the whole systems approach, and they invited practitioners, people from public health, educators, head teachers, sports development, anybody who had a keen interest in this area into a room, and they came up with anything that affects children's physical activity levels throughout the school day and beyond. And what they did was this is how the framework came about. So it literally, if you like, leaves no stone unturned. It covers every element of a child's school day, like I say, and beyond. And it looks at everything, and it looks at a whole systems approach. It's not just one person's role, because this is sometimes where when you speak to schools it falls down because a PE lead's responsible for everything. and responsible for driving it. And as you can imagine, one person can't change behaviours across a whole school
Yeah, of
staff
course.
and parents. So what this does, it looks at everybody having a role and a role to play. It involves parents, it involves governors, it involves every member of school staff. So for my role, we go in, we hold whole staff training, and then what the schools do is they do an online audit. So it's 100 questions, which sounds pretty horrific. However, it's a good reflection tool for schools to think, right, what do we do well? What do we currently do well? And what could we do better with? And from that, schools pick 3 priority areas. So all those priority areas fall under policy, stakeholders, environment, and opportunities. So it looks at things such as what is the school's vision and what's their ethos as a school, and does physical activity play a key part in that? And that's where it's going to be embedded, because if things are embedded in policy, they're much likely to filter down and change behaviours on the ground in terms of what the staff are doing day to day and what the children are doing. But we also look at stakeholders, so it's not just, again, one staff or even just teachers. We look at parents, we look at their attitudes, we look at what they do with the children, we look at the children themselves, their behaviours, their attitudes, what they're doing day to day. Can that be changed? But then we also look at wider stakeholders, things like community. How do the school link with community organisations to improve physical activity levels? So it's huge.
It's massive. This is a big bit of work.
It is, but also it's not just looking at sort of, I suppose, one element of a school day. So previously it would be all about the opportunities, so what children doing in terms of the break times, the lunch times, the active lessons, things like that. But again, if it's not in policy level and changed in terms of does the environment lend itself to physical activity? If not, you're not going to really have successful active lessons. If you got all squashed into one little space, you can't necessarily. It's not the most productive environment for active lessons. So this is why we consider all of the things in a school day, but obviously we can't consider everything at once.
Yeah, not
so the
everything.
schools pick sort of 3 priorities to work on. But the idea of the whole system is that everyone has a role. And what underpins this, which makes it unique, is it's by behaviour change model. So Mitchie's behaviour change model, and it looks at actually if schools don't have the capability, the opportunity, and the motivation, their behaviour won't change.
Yeah.
So if something's missing, so for instance, if you think about active lessons, if they don't have the physical space, then that's something they haven't got the capability then to carry out regular active lessons. If staff haven't got the confidence or knowledge that's missing, they're not going to suddenly be able to go, right, brilliant, I'm going to do active lessons several times a week if they haven't got that. So we look at, with the staff, how are those 3 things in place for behaviour to change.
Wow, that sounds like some fantastic work. And I suppose the insight from this will be really interesting from what we're able to learn from these schools and move forward and see what changes to policy can be made across the whole Tees Valley area.
Yeah, I mean, that's what my, I suppose, job satisfaction comes from, is I'm seeing firsthand the changes that are being made and the impact on the children. So some examples are, locally, we've had schools change corridor policies. So instead of just having children running down corridors and then potential behaviour issues or children getting told off, they've changed it to a walk or skip, so children have a choice. So again, you can walk down the corridor, but if you want to move in a more active way, you've got the opportunity to skip. And then one of the schools we're working with is talking about changing that every 6 weeks. So again, it might be a walk and jump, a walk and hop. So again, it's giving children the choice and freedom, but it's making positive changes in policy. A lot of schools we're working with are introducing active bursts at the start of a lesson or midway through. If you know children are getting a bit tired, starting to flag, they can get the opportunity to get up and move. So things like this, again, policy changes that have that real impact on the children. And like I say, for me personally, it's great to be kind of part of that journey along with the school and seeing
It sounds
impact.
fantastic. It really, really does. Now, you did mention early years as well. Now, we've just had our second early years conference. Can you tell us a little bit more about the early years conferences and your roles within it?
Yeah, early years was a new piece of work for us as an organisation. About 2 years ago, we held a consultation with anybody who worked with children and people across Tees Valley. And we asked them, what would you like us to prioritise? Because we had a new strategy coming out last year, and it was very much, where do you want us to spend our time and energy and support over the next 5 years? And early years and school readiness came out way above everything else. And it was in terms of, again, is it the impact of COVID? Children were coming to school, not being able to have the physical skills and communication, and self-care and things that perhaps 5, 10 years ago would have been much better. And again, there's questions around the kind of screen time implications on that, and children have less time to play and to develop skills. But really, from that, we thought, right, I'm one person. How can we have most impact on settings? And again, we kind of moved away from a delivery organisation, so we had the freedom to test and learn to do a test and learn approach. And speaking with, we worked with councils, public health practitioners, schools, and just said, where's our time best supported? And upskilling staff came out. Upskilling staff came out on top. So we started off and we held one-off courses. So again, based on need, that staff fed back to us around what they felt their needs were. But again, we just felt as if we weren't having much impact from these one-off courses because we'd only have limited numbers, and certain staff didn't turn up on the day. So we just felt, could we do something a bit bigger? So again, having the freedom to pilot new things, the early years conference came around. So what we did on the first year is we held it on the same day as the primary PE conference. So we held that during the day, and then on the night or following on at 4 o'clock, we held the early years conference. So we could share the venue, share the costs, and again, just try it out and see what happened. So we had last year great feedback from it. Everybody was really appreciative of the content, of the chance to network, again, the kind of scale of the training. So that led us to try year 2, and again, using on the back of year 1, we spoke to practitioners and said, what have you learned, what have you took away, but also what if we were told again, what would you like to have next time? So again, we worked on kind of what practitioners fed back to us, and that really set up the content for this year's conference.
Brilliant. So it's really important on working from the feedback to make sure that moving forwards, the content that's delivered at these conferences is exactly what they're looking for.
Well, it's got to be relevant to staff, and it's got to really fit their priorities and their needs. And what we try to do, although our focus, I suppose, is around physical development and around, I suppose, healthy children and getting children moving more, we also are aware that that's not everybody's priority. So what we try and do is not just make it all about kind of physical development, even the wording. All the time, we're trying to give a broader range of content, so there's something for everybody. So, but based on the feedback from last year, some of the more private settings who work with younger children said we felt it was quite school-based, some of the content. So this year, we brought in somebody who works at an organisation around the importance of the first 1001 days in terms of bonding, nurturing.
Wow. So again, you really do have the opportunity to change the landscape of these conferences and really deliver stuff that's normally a little bit kind of not on the mainstream curriculum, which will allow and help practitioners in these settings learn more and understand more, and then be able to deliver more effective strategies within the schools.
Well, ultimately, when children are safe and happy, they're ready to learn, and they're much more likely. The physical side of it will come more naturally if children are happy, safe, nurtured, and again, in that right headspace to explore, especially when they're younger, to explore and to move, to develop. They're much more likely to come naturally if they're happy and safe first and foremost. So I think, again, that first 1001 days is crucial for that. So yeah, we've listened and we've put on, like I said, tried to tailor it so there's something for everybody.
Wow, there is a lot going on your side of things. Tracy, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.